That's not my name. Call me ass. One more time.
You want to know how California got its name? It's not named after some explorer or king. Nope. Someone made the name up.
Wait, you're guilt tripping me, aren't you?
I'm cold.
I can tell. You know how I can tell? Because we're connected.
Come ask Mary. I had a feeling. I said he heard me, and he's ready for a change. This is great. Did you do this? You come in a little hot?
Yeah. I'll meet you in the house.
This is a great place for us to start. I know you don't drive.
Damn it.
Oh, hey, how are you? Mark here, the Cinemaniac. Currently, show is called the Cinemaniacs plural. Used to be two of us, now just one of me yapping at you, but I'd like to think in the grand royal biblical sense, we are the Cinemaniacs with an S. Superman. So I have 6 movies to talk about this week, and I will do my best at talking at you, to you, a bit better than I usually do, and with more eloquence and vociferousness. Let's just get on with it, shall we? First up is a film. I'm going to go way over here. Hi. Do you like this? The guy spent a lot of time setting that up, so I figured we should show it once in a while. So there it is. It's pretty, isn't it? It's kind of pretty. We have a film that's been out for a week or two, but I've finally just caught up with it this week. It stars Olivia Colman and, boy, you'd think I'd be better at this by now, Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz in a tale of the, you could almost call it the madness of Queen Anne. These two women who are vying for the affections and attention and social status of the dementing Queen Anne, vying to become her, the favorite.
Why don't you pick me up and smoke me sometime?
Okay, this was great. I saw this yesterday, big screen, and some people are going to look at that trailer and they're going to just totally tune out, and they're going to be like, this is some stuffy, British, boring, inaccessible hogwash, and it's not. This is a soap opera. This is almost a horror movie at times in terms of how it plays out. This is just deliciously malevolent manipulation goes on in this film. Basically the story, I don't like to give away too much of the story. I like to go in as blind as I can to films, but I know some people kind of actually want to know what the movie's about before they watch it. So you have Olivia Colman, who you may know if you watched the UK Broadchurch show, which was great, and she's been in UK films and TV for years. And she is Queen Anne, who is stricken with gout and wheelchair-bound and bedridden and half in and out of her mind at times, sort of a prisoner of her power and a prisoner of her ailment. You have Rachel Weisz, who is a sort of, what do you want, a conciliary. She's sort of she has the ear of the Queen. She is an old friend of the Queen, and she sort of, through the Queen, exerts undue influence on the Queen in order to get things she wants done in terms of war and policy and taxation and all this other sort of thing. And then you have Emma Stone, who is this young, distant relative of Rachel Weisz, who is very low class, and she comes to the palace hoping to get a job. So somebody said this is sort of like a Dangerous Liaisons, where it's a lot of backstabbing and manipulation and currying favor and doing anything that you can to rise above your station in life. So there's that going on. And what's funny is Deadwood was a show on HBO that was shocking to a lot of people because they used what we understand to be kind of the actual language they used back then, which was coarse, to put it bluntly. This film does that too, which was a little shocking at first. Some of the words that are tossed around, and you're like, well, yeah, these words have been around since then. And it serves to make the film feel less separated by time and distance in some of the language that's used, some of the very R-rated language, and some of the things you see in the film. This is an R-rated film. This is not that kids would want to see this, but this isn't for those with tender sensibilities, shall we say. Everyone in it is very good, and it is shot gorgeously in these palaces. And occasionally it uses like an extreme fisheye wide-angle lens that at first I thought was an odd choice, but what it serves in a lot of these rooms is you can see all 4 walls, floor, and ceiling, or 3 out of the 4 walls and the floor and the ceiling. You really get a sense of how giant and opulent and what a what a guilt-edged prison this is for the Queen and some of the people who work for her. So you have the story of Emma Stone, who's rising up. You have Rachel Weisz, who sees her power and authority and favor challenged, and how she fights back. And then you see the Queen, who is sort of trapped between all these people, and she just wants to be liked and just wants to, try to have a little bit of fresh air and freedom in a world that she's very much in a cage. So the film is a lot funnier than I sort of expected. The trailer makes it look funny, but sometimes trailers do that to get butts in seats. But this is a very funny film. It is also very dramatic. It is also very sad at times too. And I saw it at the Alamo, which I love, and they did a lot of really cool stuff with their pre-show, where they show you things that give you sort of historical context and cinematic historical context for what has led to this moment of you sitting there. And one of the films they showed a trailer for was Barry Lyndon, the Kubrick film, which was set in a relatively similar time period, and that film was famous for a lot of scenes being lit by candlelight. And this film had that too. And it's one of those things that you forget growing up in the modern era with electricity and lights everywhere and a flashlight in your pocket that can also do your taxes and walk your dog. And here you see people walking through these cavernous hallways that are pitch black at night. The only, however many candles you can summon is what gives you light, and candles don't give a heck of a lot of light. So that was kind of an interesting little reminder. I'm kind of talking in circles here. I thought The Favorite was very, very good. This is Oscar contender material, probably why it was released now. I would say anyone in it is probably deserving of that. It was a film where I didn't quite know what was going to happen next with the levels of manipulation and the long con and backstabbing and almost literally at times. It's highly, highly recommended by me. It is not as stuffy as one would think it would be from the trappings of the film, and it is really something to see on the big screen, definitely. You will, just watching the monitor here, watching that trailer, the costumes and the interiors and the exteriors are nowhere near as impressive on a TV, however big you have at home, as it is on a large theater screen. It is not playing locally in the town from which I'm speaking right now. It's sort of a limited release, but I feel like this will be an Oscar contender, and I'm sure the Colonial in town will get it, and I'm sure it'll move to more and more screens or to different screens as time goes by. I was seeing it, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in. And funny enough, I was able to use a Movie Pass to see this. I was like, my finger was hovering over the cancel button on that subscription, and happened to be playing. It happened to be a movie I hadn't seen. It happened to be playing where I was going to be on the day I was going to be there, and I got my money's worth this month. So I guess I have it for another month. More on that later. Now, that is the only thing I saw in the theater this weekend. Nothing new came to town locally. There were new releases, but I didn't get a chance to see anything other than The Favorite. So I'll be probably playing a little catch-up the next few weeks. As I can see films that have been in release, I'll talk about them on the show. And hopefully you're not going to wait for my opinion as to whether you're going to go see a new movie or not. If you see something I didn't see, send us an email, movies@CheshireTV.org, and I will gladly read your thoughts on Anna and the Apocalypse and the other stuff that was playing nowhere. So we will now move on to home video, that which you can see on the home video format, platform, service, or device of your choice, or however else you watch movies legally. First up is a film released this week from Dark Sky Films. Very kind of a Twilight Zone kind of vibe to this. A family gets together, dysfunctional family gets together for Christmas dinner, and suddenly their house is encased in some kind of thick metallic mesh, and their TV says on it, "Await further instructions." So this is a fine example of the kind of film that I see that goes straight to video or straight to Netflix or straight to cable or whatever, and I think is just as good, if not better, than things that I go and pay to see in the theater. The problem probably for this getting a U.S. Theatrical distribution is that it's nobody recognizable. Well, that's not true. Almost nobody with marquee value in this film. David Bradley, who plays the racist grandfather in this film, you would probably recognize from the Harry Potter movies. He's the old guy who's like the caretaker or whatever at Hogwarts. And you've seen him in a lot of British films. I think he's in a couple of the Cornetto trilogy of films. So to me, that's an asset when I don't know anybody in the movie, because I'm not bringing any baggage. These are just, as far as I'm concerned, these are these people. And especially in a film like this, where as it goes on, you're not sure who's going to make it to the end of the film. When there are no major marquee stars in the film, it really, anyone can die at any time, which is one of Joe Bob Briggs' rules about a good horror movie. So this is like a Twilight Zone episode. This is a lot like, it reminded me of Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, if you know that, or The Shelter, two Twilight Zone episodes that played on paranoia of the other, your neighbor might be a commie rat, or there's an infiltrator in your midst sort of thing. So it's a family getting together, and they all have their issues with each other at Christmas, and they go to open the door at one point, and there's this thick metallic mesh over the door that they can't hack their way through, and the TV displays await further instructions. I already told you that, but that's in case you came in late. And one by one, this TV message changes that seems to be causing these people to do various things, and the father takes charge and says, this is the government, and they're telling us they know what's best, and this is what we need to do. And you can see that this is manipulating these people into basically dismantling each other. And it's really creepy, and it's very believable, and that people would react this way to this thing. And it really, it works on themes of long-held, regret isn't the word, long-held resentments and beefs people have with each other coming to the fore, and blindly following orders and blindly accepting what you're told from a media outlet, and many, many things. It is so relevant. What's funny is, like the Twilight Zone episodes, Twilight Zone is great because it was relevant in 1962, and it's relevant now because it's the human condition and it's the way we have not evolved. So this film gets progressively more sort of sci-fi as it goes along, but for the most part, it's just what is going on, and will these people survive it? And it's very not in your stomach, kind of grueling. It gets a little gruesome here and there at times, and some of the elements are extremely relevant to today. If you turn on the news or talk to anybody or walk out the door, all the performances I thought were really good. It had me from the second things went down, which it doesn't take too far to start that. It sets up all these resentments that are going to play out later in interpersonal dynamics, and it just keeps going, and it's really good. And this is one of those films that I feel like, waving a flag for, because it's going to come and go probably without a whole lot of notice unless somebody tells somebody to go see it. It's not a title that really sticks out. The cover is not deceptive. The cover shows a moment in the movie, but it shows a moment really late in the movie that isn't really representative of what happens for the rest of the running time. But I thought it was really, really good. I'm really glad I saw it. And it is out on DVD, probably Blu-ray, definitely Blu-ray, maybe DVD from Dark Sky Films on Tuesday. Then we move on to something you've heard of, something I saw in the theater, something a lot of people are going to see. Denzel Washington returns, filling in the role that Edward Woodward played on TV on CBS many moons ago, as a man who operates outside the law, who is there to avenge and help out and even the playing field, shall we say, for those who have no other recourse, who are being wronged in life. He is back with a vengeance in The Equalizer 2.
Hi, I live in a house.
Doreen!
Oh, that's my mommy, and she has another grease burn on her hand.
Such violence, such anger and retribution. I loved it. I like these movies. I like revenge movies. I like vigilante movies. I like seeing a good guy take out the bad guys. And I like movies where you can see what's happening. And thus far, these Equalizer movies have given me all of that and more. Denzel Washington, a guy who's a good actor and brings like gravitas and pathos and other S words into these films. I didn't expect there to be a sequel. I really liked the first Equalizer. I never watched the show, so I had no baggage with anything to do with that. I just thought it was a really good revenge vigilante kind of movie. And I didn't think it did well enough to warrant a sequel, and I'm really happy it did, because I would love one of these every few years. And hopefully this one did well enough to warrant more. This does something that's interesting. So it's the overall arcing story is, and I always wonder when they do this really, really early in a series of films, you set up everybody in these films, and then in the sequel, somebody gets killed who's was a big part of the previous film. And I'm always like, why don't we live with these characters for a little while? And then it means a heck of a lot more when you blow up the base or you kill the superior or whatever. Not like 2 movies in, but anyway, the motivating force in this is that one of Robert McCall's old friends from the company gets killed, and he goes on a revenge trip to do that. At the same time, you see him living in this pretty average apartment building, and he sort of takes under his wing like a troubled youth to help repaint a mural or do something like that. And I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, I would be okay if it was just this. If it was just this older guy mentoring this younger guy and talking about life. And I guess that means I'm getting older, because and this is a movie that I go to and I pay money to see a guy kill a bunch of guys. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, I just want to see him talk to this kid. I don't want to see him hang out and make soup. And that part was really good. So I didn't mind when it wasn't that. And at the same time, when it was that, I'm like, you can't have nonstop action. Movies that try to do that get boring and they run out of interesting things to do. So to devote part of this movie to like actual human beings trying to make the world a better place between killing people was fine with me. And the action gets a little tiny bit ridiculous. There's a sequence in a storm on Cape Cod or something. I think this is set in Boston like the first one. Toward the end, that gets a little CGI and a little silly, but overall, you sort of believe that this guy can do what he says he can do, and you see that what he can do, and how he, plans out what he's going to do and then executes it literally is a lot of fun. So I'm so happy with Equalizer 2. It will stand on my shelf next to the first Equalizer. I like physical media, and I am very happy. I really hope that we get a third one. Who knows? Maybe if enough people watch this online and buy the DVD or Blu-ray, it'll warrant more films in the series. Speaking of revenge films, you say that's fine. You can have your Equalizer. I don't want to see a man killing people for revenge. I want to see a woman killing people for revenge. Well, guess what? They make those too, and that makes me happy. I don't care who it is, as long as they're killing people. We have a film where Jennifer Garner returns to the role of somebody who kills people, and she's a woman whose family is brutally gunned down, and she decides to enact revenge long after the fact, and she goes by the name of Peppermint.
Dick Tracy here, closing in on Muskie and those eggs. Okay, Muskie, the jig is up.
This is one I saw in the theater, and I don't usually rewatch. I don't have time or the ability, really, to rewatch things I've seen in the theater before we talk about them on video. The stuff that's fresh to me that I talk about on video is stuff that's sent to me, and sadly, we don't have a connection with the big studios to get things in advance of this like we used to. So anyway, I said all that to say this. I talk about The Equalizer, and I can remember the majority of that movie because I liked it that much, and I'm telling you about it. I saw Peppermint at the drive-in with The Predator, which we'll be talking about next week. Funny enough, two of the most hated films to come out this year amongst fans and things like that. And I remember liking Peppermint for what it was at the time. It wasn't anything terribly important. And honestly, right now, I had to look at the trailer to really remember much about it other than Jennifer Garner kills people. And a lot of people were really critical of this, and I didn't really see the hate. To me, this is like an average revenge thriller. It's not above and beyond in any way all the other movies you've seen where somebody's family is hurt or murdered and they go on a spree. It doesn't do anything new other than the fact that it's a woman, but there are others of those. That's not really a new thing. It's just there aren't as many female revenge vigilante films. So Jennifer Garner is back in a role of a person who's an action hero. She had done Alias for years and years. And I never really watched Alias. I started to watch it and I thought the action was badly done, so I stopped watching it. So I kind of forgot that she did that. So at first it was a novelty that, ooh, the woman who plays the mom in all these movies is killing people. And then I'm like, oh no, she kind of did that for 10 seasons. So this isn't innovation as far as she's concerned. It's done sort of in a nonlinear structure. You sort of flash back to see that she was this woman whose husband and daughter were killed in a drive-by, and then she goes after the drug cartel or the criminals who did it. And the thrill of these films is to see the bad guys get killed. And there is one moment that they use in the film toward the beginning where you see these three guys hanging upside down from a Ferris wheel. And bloodthirsty lout that I am, I was like, oh, we didn't get to see those three guys get killed. We just saw the end. That's three, vengeful death scenes I've been robbed of. But otherwise, I thought it was fine. Most of the complaints I heard was that it was unexceptional, and I would say it is unexceptional. I don't remember anything strongly about it other than thinking it was decent while I watched it. And at the drive-in, that's one of the joys of the drive-in or of a double or triple feature is that one of the films can be lesser, but the one you came to see is good and the other one is fine. So Peppermint is fine. It's a programmer. This is the kind of thing I think with some edits I always say you'd see on TNT some afternoon or something like that on cable, and you'd kind of half watch it and think it was fine. Peppermint is didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth. Up next, speaking of bad taste, that is actually accidentally the best segment I'm going to have today. We have a new release from Blue Underground on video of William Lustig's classic, Classick once again, New York City slasher film, incredibly controversial in its day, still a little bit rough to watch. I don't know what will be left of the trailer that we show you. I think it's a TV spot, so it's safe. This from 1980 is a new 4K Blu-ray release of Maniac.
Soothing. Baby Magic by Menon.
So that's an original TV spot for Maniac. I always wish us to run the TV spots when we can because they're shorter, they're more concise, and there's no naughty bits in them, which is unfortunate as a lot of the trailers that we try to run in this show have to be sanitized for your protection, for broadcast standards and such. Not that we have much in the way of standards here. So Maniac was a film that came out in 1980. It was set upon by watchdog groups and women's groups and civic groups and every kind of group that you could have who wanted decency in life and cinema. They all got the knives out for Maniac because Maniac is explicit and gory and gruesome and sleazy and disgusting and skeevy and kind of wonderful for all those reasons. You have Joe Spinell, who is a guy, he's a that guy, like my friends and I would say. He's a guy who was in The Godfather, he was in tons of New York-based cop movies, and he was in Rocky, I believe, and he is this. You watch the movie and I can understand not liking the movie for how effective it is because Joe Spinell is sweaty and gruesome and scary and just ugh, when you want to take a shower after you watch this movie. And at first you think that's an insult to the movie, and then I think that's a really big compliment to this movie because it's effective. Joe Spinell wasn't a murderer. He might have been a weird guy, but he wasn't a murderer. And these are all actors. This was all people on a crew making this film, but they so evoke that nasty New York that a lot of people strangely pine for now, that old Times Square where everywhere you turn is danger. And this falls into a category of movie that was very effective for me as a little kid, living far, far away from the big city. But in that era, you had your Dirty Harry movies and you had Death Wish and things like and Maniac, where it felt like if you went to the big city, lurking in every shadow was somebody who wanted to just kill you and do bad things to you. And I grew up with that feeling of being like scared of the city because I saw trailers for movies like Maniac and a movie like Maniac where any innocent conversation could lead to you just being found in pieces somewhere. So this is a new 4K scan from the original negative of Maniac that was pretty recently found, I think. And this movie looks gorgeous, disgustingly gorgeous. I mean, it looks gorgeous as it can when you're talking about, a filthy a filthy big city atmosphere and filthy apartments and generally a lot of filth. There's some clean elements too, but it's a lot of filth. The gore is beautiful. The reds have never looked redder in the blood that spurts from various orifices. So Joe Spinell is a very disturbed guy with a mother complex, not unusual with serial killers, who basically just stalks the streets of New York. So it is not a lot more than a lot of these segments of him going out and finding somebody and doing something bad to them. And then there's this weird detour that it takes where he meets in a graveyard, I believe. He sees Caroline Munro, who you may know from some of the Sinbad movies and Hammer movies, Dracula AD 72 and Spy Who Loved Me and just a lot of British stuff. She's a fashion photographer and he sort of falls for her. And we get this weird thing where he's like fashionably dressed and they're going out to dinner and all that, which is a huge contrast from the, wearing an army jacket and a stocking cap and literally stalking people. It's the cap he wears when he stalks people. So there's this other like romantic sort of subplot and where that goes. But what this is, the strength of this movie is the horror effects are shocking. Like the first time I saw this was the old Anchor Bay videotape with the little door that opened on the front, and it was the uncut version. And there's a sequence with Tom Savini, who I believe did the effects, in a car. And I don't want to say more than that, but the first time I saw it, it like stopped my heart. It was so realistic and just, I didn't believe that I just saw that. So it's got that going for it. It's got Joe Spinell's performance and his mania going for it. And it has a lot of authentic New York City from around 1979, when the city was in really bad shape as far as crime and just disgusting nature. As disgusting as the city could be at the time. So this preserves that for all to enjoy. So what this is, I brought my copy. I didn't bring the slipcase. So it's got like, it's a 3-disc set. It's like the soundtrack and 2 discs, and then some like a nice little booklet too with an essay and some info about the film. Disc 1 is the movie, and then like the TV ads, trailer spots, radio spots. Disc 2 is just tons of extras. A lot were ported over from earlier releases because this has had a couple of special editions over the years. But then there's some new stuff that's really, really cool. You go onto the menu and it's 3 categories. It's like supplements, some publicity, and outrage. And you click on outrage and it's this amazing horn of plenty of news reports from when this film came out, showing people picketing and showing movie reviewers, including Gene Siskel, and news reporters just being disgusted that this filth exists, and this film being used as an example of how low we've gotten in our culture. And it's all organized by city and newscast. So it's got like Philadelphia, live at 5, this date, this time. It's obviously came from Bill Lustig's collection. And then there's another printed outrage. It's a still gallery where it's all just the worst review quotes that this film got, saying, to say this film is perverted is an insult to perverts. I mean, I was just laughing out loud at how horribly this film was received by some people. There are also Easter eggs I found. If you go on the disc and you sort of click up or down on each disc, there's a little something extra on there that's kind of cool. And 2 or 3 commentaries. And maybe my favorite extra on this was, it was said that the song Maniac from Flashdance was originally written for this film, but with lyrics talking about this maniac killer, and that nobody had ever heard that version before. And that's been kicked around for a while. So there's a sequence in this where Bill Lustig, the director of Maniac, goes to Pennsylvania to the home of Michael Sembello, who sang that song in Flashdance and had a huge hit with it, and the guy who wrote it. And they talk about that. And I guess I don't want to give away what the answer is, but the answer is pretty funny, and the way the segment ends I thought was very funny. And it satisfied a curiosity I've had for many years. So that's on there. So this set is out tomorrow. It is incredibly deluxe. Like I say with a lot of these restorations, if you've ever owned Maniac before and you're a fan of this movie, I would advise getting rid of the other versions, and this is all you need. This is the kind of thing that I love. This is what I want when a movie that I love comes out. Give me everything there is to have in one package, and this is like my dossier on this film. It's every way it was originally advertised, critical reception, all the extras I could want, new deleted scenes that nobody has seen in outtakes before, and you get the original cover or the original poster as the cover. So basically everything you could want is in this one little thing. The slipcase for this is actually lenticular, so the everything from the knife to the severed head to the bulge in the pants is coming at you in lenticular 3D, which is important for the holidays, I think. Up next is the part of the show that we always excitedly look toward. This is the Arrow. Oh, there it is. Right in my reverse negative shoulder blade. This is the Arrow Video Corner. And this week it is not 1, but 3 films packaged together as one. These are early films. Okay, don't roll the clip just yet, because I'm going to kind of say the title. This is 3 early films that Brian DePalma and Robert DeNiro made in the late 60s, before either of them, skyrocketed to being superstars of the 70s. And it is called De Niro and De Palma, The Early Films.
You've got the softest skin in the whole wide world.
So these are films that were never terribly easy to see. I remember renting Greetings from a local video store years ago. And of course it was packaged with this huge picture of De Niro on the cover, looking like he did sort of in Taxi Driver because he was the big star. These are very different from the films that De Palma would go on to make. Everybody knows De Palma for, I'm going to say a bunch that come to mind, and I'm going to miss easily half of the films you've heard of that he said. He did Carrie, he did Body Double, he did Blowout, he did Dress to Kill, he did The Fury, he did not Dead Ringers, the Raising Cain, Femme Fatale, on and on and on. The man has worked a lot, and he's mostly known for like really stylish and kind of shocking films and Untouchables, and also of paying, let's say politely paying homage to great films. Untouchables, it was the Potemkin Steps sequence, among other things. Body Double was Hitchcock. A lot of it is Hitchcock-inspired stuff. And what's interesting, too, is Blowout, which I love, is really kind of another take on Blow Up, which is a movie that I don't really like all that much. I think it's okay, but I think Blowout is a better version of that same concept. And it's funny, in Greetings, they reference Blow Up a lot, which is funny that he would later go on to kind of remake that. So here's 3 films. I'll talk about them in the order I think they were made as opposed to the order they are on this set. You have a movie called The Wedding Party, which DePalma co-directed with 2 other people. Shot in very nice, crisp black and white on an island. I can't remember the name of the island. It was sort of like a posh island just off New York. And this guy and his buddies go to this, weekend of events leading up to his marriage. And his friends are trying to tell the guy he shouldn't be married, and the guy eventually realizes he doesn't want to get married. It's very episodic. It's a lot of little sketches. It's heavily improvised, which doesn't always work to me. A lot of improvised dialogue just feels like people casually talking and going nowhere, and that's what it felt like here. You have a very young Jill Clayburgh, which is kind of cool. William Finley, who you will see in a lot of DePalma films, including Phantom of the Paradise. He's the star, another DePalma film. And then you have a very young DeNiro, kind of pudgy. I didn't recognize him at first. He doesn't really look like him as much as he does in the other 2 films. And this was shot 66 or 67, I think. And I didn't really care for The Wedding Party all that much. Really nicely shot, really cool exteriors and interiors in these big mansions and houses on this island. But it kind of was a lot of walking in circles, didn't really go much of anywhere to me, and didn't really speak didn't speak to me much other than the whole anxiety of a young person with saying, do I want to lock myself down with this other person forever? Do I really want to get married? Am I an adult enough to get married? What kind of crazy family am I marrying into? That sort of thing. The second film in the set is Greetings, which, like I said, is the one I had seen before. This was shot 1968, I believe, very much a New York City film, shot all over the streets of New York. And this is an actor whose name I've sadly forgotten. He's the guy who didn't go on to do much of anything else. And his 2 buddies are Garrett Graham, who you would recognize from Phantom of the Paradise, from Used Cars. He's the guy in Used Cars who's very superstitious about red cars and rabbit's feet and all that. He was Bud the Chud. And then DeNiro was the third part of this trio of guys. And a lot of it is about the draft. This is a very, as they said back then, this is a very now picture. It's about 3 guys who are facing induction into the Army for Vietnam, and what are they going to do to get out of it, or what are they going to do to occupy their time until they get called up and all that other stuff. One guy is trying to find love in computer dating, so we go back to these little sketches of him and these wacky dates that he goes on or attempts to. Garrett Graham is a Kennedy assassination enthusiast, and the whole movie he's just looking at books and looking at diagrams and trying to plot out on a semi-nude woman where the bullet entry and the exit holes might be. And then DeNiro is a voyeur, so he's watching people and he's talking to Alan Garfield, who's this guy who sells dirty movies and stuff like that. It's very all over the place. There's not much of a story per se. It's just these little sketches here and there. It is very of its time. I think the strongest strength of this movie now is somebody wanting to look back at seeing De Niro in a very early role and seeing De Palma very early on. There's a lot of interesting camera stuff. There's very, as they say in the extras, very Richard Lester inspired, sped up camera work and wacky stuff. It's hit and miss personally for me. I mean, I'm fairly well versed in the politics and culture of that period, so I know a lot of what they were talking about, but a lot of it feels like they were speaking to the youth of the day and trying to stir up, rouse the rabble. And it's very much of like an underground movie or a subversive anarchist kind of movie. And apparently it was a big deal at the time. It was shot by everybody who shot it was under 30, which was an unusual thing. And this film got a release and a pretty good critical reception too. The third film in the set is called Hi Mom. Apparently they wanted to call it Son of Greetings or Greetings 2, but the distributor didn't want that. So it is really a sequel to Greetings with De Niro playing the same character he did in the first film. This is him after 3 years later, after he's come back from Vietnam and he's trying to readjust to society. And he basically moves into this terrible apartment, and the landlord is played by a younger looking Charles Durning than you're used to seeing. He's got color in his hair and he's a little skinnier. And he realizes that his apartment has a view of this huge apartment building with picture windows, and he can see inside it. It's very rear window, which, with De Palma makes sense. And De Niro decides he's going to go back to Alan Garfield from Greetings, and he's going to sell him nudie movies that he shoots through the windows of everybody's house, these voyeuristic little shorts. So a lot of it is going back and forth with him trying to do that. But then you get into one of the people in the apartments is Laura Parker, who played Angelique on Dark Shadows. Very small role, but it's kind of cool to see her in a feature film around the same time she was still doing Dark Shadows, or right at the tail end of that. And then Garrett Graham from the first film plays a different character in this, and he's this revolutionary, trying to, help the black cause and do revolutionary theater, and he's putting on this play called Be Black, Baby, that gives white people the experience of being black in, 1970 America or 69. And it's, again, like Greetings, it's all over the place. It's a lot of little sketches. It's a lot of little bursts of thought and activity. Pretty stylish, relatively funny for the most part. And as you watch the movie, you're seeing De Niro become more and more like radical. This is another, not avant-garde, underground political kind of movie. And there's an extended sequence that's interesting, but for me, stopped the movie cold. It's done in black and white, and it's this whole Be Black Baby thing where they take these posh, white upper-class theater goers who think they're getting this, culture to the underground, and they basically put them through this harrowing experience where they suffer, the worst outrages that a black American might suffer in the 60s or the 50s, and they come out saying, I just thought it was wonderful theater. This was amazing. I'll tell all my friends. When I was beaten, it was just fantastic. That's a long section in this movie, and to me, it kind of really slowed things down quite a bit. And for me, the film didn't really recover after that, but in reading other people's responses to it, that was one section that a lot of people really liked a lot. So again, it is very, very 1969, 1970. I do wonder if some modern viewers, well, these movies aren't for casual viewers. This is really for people who are interested in seeing very early De Niro and very early DePalma. So I don't think a casual viewer would get a lot out of these because they're kind of weird and very much of their day. It is very interesting to see De Niro, especially in Hi Mom. How often I'm watching him and I just feel like he's Travis Bickle. I feel like this is so close to the guy he would be in Taxi Driver. He's on the street, and the attitude he has, and the same locations, and some of the same kind of line delivery, not quite as crazy, but you can sort of see the seeds of where that would go. These films are really nicely restored. Now we're on to the technical aspects. There were moments in Hi Mom that I was looking at it, and I hit pause, and I was like, this could have been a movie from the late 70s. This could have been from 10 years later in terms of how good the color looked. This could have been a movie shot yesterday in some terms of how great the color looks in these films, because they're such a good restoration job. When I saw Greetings on tape, well, I mean, when you see anything on tape, you know how good it's going to look. But it was an old beat-up 4:3 transfer. It didn't look that hot. Wedding Party is a 4:3 film, but the rest of these are widescreen. Supplements are fairly light but interesting. There's a critical appreciation of the films that's about 15, 16 minutes that talks about all three. And then the man who produced these films, or at least Greetings and Hi Mom, there's about a 10-minute talk on each film with him where he talks about his experience of getting to the point where he made the films and how they made the films and how they released them and where they went from there. And then there's a trailer for Hi Mom on the disc with that. There's also like a booklet and other stuff. So it's not like the most deluxe package. The real strength of this is just being able to see these movies together looking this good. And that is out tomorrow from Arrow. So I have a few minutes. I will talk a little bit more about MoviePass because I said I wasn't going to, but we'd like to keep you up to date on how things work here. So I was ready to write it off last week. I think it was last week I talked about this. And then I posted something about it online, and a friend sent me an article from Variety that apparently MoviePass is trying to get their act together. And starting in 2019, they're going to offer 3 new packages, $9.95, $19.95, and I think a $20-something package, where the $9.95 will be pretty much what it is now, which is you are very limited in the movies you can see, and you can see 3 a month. And hopefully, like me, you'll go somewhere where they're showing one of the movies so you can get your money's worth. The $19.95 is going to be what the old plan was, to a degree. You'll get 3 movies that you can see a month, and there'll be no restrictions. It'll just be any movie at any theater that isn't 3D, IMAX, higher ticket price. And then I think after that, you get your $2 discount on movies. And for me, that's fine. I always said when MoviePass was working at full power, you could double or triple the price. As long as I get my value out of it, that's cool. The 20-something 95 option is going to be, you'll get 1 premium ticket per month. So you'll get to see an IMAX or whatever. If you have an AMC near you, Stubs is clearly the best policy. That's the best thing you can get. But I'm actually looking forward to seeing if this really works. So I'll perhaps be a fool and stick it out a little bit longer with MoviePass, because if I can get my 3 movies a month for that $19.95, it's still saving me money. And for this show, I need to see as much as I can. So anytime I can save cash, that's cool. Next week, we have more films to talk about, if they come to any theater that I can get to. We have The Mule with Clint Eastwood, another Clint Eastwood directed film. and starring, where he plays an old man who's a drug mule, and I don't know all the details, and I don't want to know the details until I get there, but it looks like a pretty heavy drama. We have something called Mortal Engines, which I believe Peter Jackson has some ephemeral hand in. It is Hugo Weaving and a young girl who is probably the chosen one, who doesn't realize that she has all kinds of power to save the world. And it's a lot of CG worlds, it's a lot of green screen action. It's probably, I don't know, it's not my kind of movie anymore, but we'll see. And then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Everybody thinks this is going to be huge. It probably will be. This is an animated Spider-Man film based on a comic series that is sort of like another different kind of Spider-Man. Another person puts on the suit and does their thing. My only problem, I think, going into Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is I think the animation looks terrible. Like, it's drawn okay and the colors are really cool, but it's got this weird herky-jerky motion, and I feel like film technology should get better over time. Like, that's why I kind of have a beef with these Lego movies. I'm like, we've come this far and this much cost to see a movie, and I'm looking at Lego movies? Really? I don't care how well they're written. Really, come on. So a lot of people like the Lego movies, but I was like, it's cute, but really, Legos, this looks like a little kid did it. So the Spider-Verse thing, the animation looks like a really bad, like, real video, dial-up modem kind of motion. And I can't believe this movie's really going to look this way. But I love the idea of animated superhero movies because, you have really no limitations, and bad CGI is not an issue if it's all animated anyway, and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I hope this movie's good. I hope it leads to more animated superhero films. I know straight to video, we've been having a lot of those for a while. I know DC has done a lot that I hear are pretty good, and Marvel has done a lot straight to video. So maybe if we get another cool one, Batman Mask of the Phantasm years and years ago won't be a fluke, and we'll get, God help us, we'll get even more superhero movies on the big screen. That's all I really have to discuss this week. I will be back next week with even more to talk about, more cool old stuff, more hopefully cool new stuff. Until then, I am Mark, and I am the Cinemaniac. Bye.